Let's move up to Capitol Hill, where Representative Patrick McHenry, the Republican from North Carolina, is calling on the SEC to move forward with Hester Peirce's safe harbor token provision, which she first ran with in 2019. This provision would allow cryptocurrency firms and startups to create a sort of barrier during the first 3 years of their operations so they cannot be sued by the SEC. What this would kind of do is create like a natural barrier legally that would protect tokens from being scrutinized as securities. If we look back kind of in the history books, we saw that Bitcoin kind of flew under the radar just because it was so novel and new. There wasn't really a lot of price action around it for the first 2 or 3 years. Ethereum also somehow kind of escaped under the law. The Ether token didn't really have any scrutiny from the SEC. Years later, there was some acknowledgement from regulators that Ether would probably have been classified as a security at the time. But it kind of grew out of that and now is kind of a currency in its own right. And that's what this bill would do. This is what McHenry is looking to do, is kind of classify that these tokens or these new projects would be able to kind of spread their wings and grow beforehand. So throw this over to Naomi. Really interested to get your take on this. Of course, Crypto Mom is in the picture again, and we love that.
We love that. Hester Peirce is the greatest thing that could happen to crypto, being a representative at the SEC who's kind of talking on the community's behalf. I mean, it's interesting because she's been throwing around this safe harbor rule for a while, and it hasn't really gotten any traction. Meanwhile, she's also pushing back against whatever the commissioner is saying or whatever lack of guidance the SEC is coming out with. She's routinely pushing back. And again, it doesn't really go anywhere. It's surprising to me that an SEC commissioner isn't really getting as much notice, and their word isn't being taken as seriously as I think it should. She is by far the smartest person on the SEC who understands that, if we're talking about securities, one of the main pillars of whether something is a security is how decentralized is it. But you can't have something that is decentralized right off the bat, because this stuff is code. It's written by people. A single person is centralized in their self, right? And so you can always take this stuff back right to the beginning and say, well, it came from this single developer, or this isn't decentralized. And what she's saying is, well, actually, the purpose of this could be to create a decentralized network. It just has to be given the room to get there. That's what she's proposing. Give this a safe harbor so this stuff can grow, like Ethereum. All of the amazing stuff, all of the incredible innovation we have now because the SEC didn't know what it was doing at the time and didn't come down on Ethereum right in the early stages, which was this centralized entity. And because we gave it that room to grow, it was able to develop into what has become this very decentralized network with so many different teams building all kinds of products on top of it. And it's really beautiful to watch that grow. How many other things are we cutting down by, just tightening the reins too early on? How many flowers are we just killing in advance before they had the chance to bloom? It is really sad to think of. We don't really see those effects. All we see is, what the SEC points to and says, well, we're protecting people and these are the good things that happen. Well, what about all of the bad things that have happened, or the things that we stopped from happening, the good things that we just, stopped right at the start that never got to eventuate? There's so much of that and we just never get to see it. So we need to be cognizant of that. But Zach, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see these characters emerge on Capitol Hill. Who's going to be taking the hardline stance against, and who's going to be boosting these technologies in the Congress? I mean, it's really interesting to, ostensibly here, Hester Peirce and McHenry had a bit of a powwow and said, hey, how do we advance this through the legislative process? Hey, cool idea, Crypto Mom. Can I get this into law somehow? And it's going to be interesting to see who ultimately comes out and shows support for this idea, because you're right? I mean, you see all the hallmarks of sort of the classic politician statement, this is about jobs in America, right? We don't want to stifle innovation and all that good stuff. It's going to be interesting to see if that rhetoric stirs anyone to come to this bill's defense. Or on the other side, we're going to see people who are saying, hey, other sort of classic hallmarks of political speech, consumer protection, we got to look out for the small guy, all that stuff that we're seeing on the other side of this argument right now. So it's going to be interesting to see again how Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and especially new token launches, how these become political issues and whether or not they become partisan issues. I think it's still early innings for that. We haven't seen it become fully ossified as a Republican versus Democrat issue, but there might be a point at which we're going to see that happen. And the fact that this is the latest opportunity to see partisanship coalesce around these ideas is going to be interesting. This is just going to be interesting to watch. So that's what I'm looking at here. Interesting to see that all of the crypto policy wonks, from Coin Center to Blockchain Association are real hype on this. They're like, hey, this is good. This is a good step in the right direction. So it's going to be interesting to see if that momentum and that support goes anywhere, or if this just becomes a sad, lonely bill that's sitting on the steps of Capitol Hill and not ultimately codified into law. Those are my thoughts. I'll pass it.
Jen.
I'm passing it to me. I was so happy to see this story. I thought that we were never going to hear about Hester Peirce's safe harbor, and it was just going to die with Gary Gensler as the chair of the SEC. So I was so happy to see it brought up. But Zach, to your point, we'll have to just wait and see if this goes anywhere. And while I think it's a great innovation and we have to do this to keep jobs and innovation right here in the United States, I think that regulators don't want to see companies be decentralized, because then they don't have any control over what's happening. And I don't think they can imagine a future where we are operating like that, because then they're out of a job. So unfortunately, I'm a little bit pessimistic, but we'll see what happens.